Chapter 1. She broke up with me on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic Wednesday, not an argument that had been building for weeks. A quiet Wednesday in March when she came home from work and sat across from me at the kitchen table and told me she had been thinking. Claire was always thinking. That was one of the things I had loved about her. She was strategic in a way that I had found impressive before I understood what that strategy was actually in service of. She said she loved me. She said it first, the way people said things first when the thing after it was going to hurt. She said she loved me and she had been happy and she did not regret any of it. And then she said she needed more. Not more from me specifically, more from her life. She had ambitions. She had a specific vision of what her future looked like. And she had come to understand that my current trajectory was not going to produce that future. My current trajectory. I was 25. I had been working on a startup for 18 months. It was not making money yet. It was not supposed to be making money yet. It was in the building stage that every company that eventually made money had to go through. I had investors. I had a product. I had a team of 7 people who believed in what we were doing. Claire did not believe in what we were doing. She believed in what was already done, in the already built version of success, in the man who already had the apartment and the car and the title. She had been patient for 18 months and the patience had run out. She said she hoped I understood. I said I did. She moved out that weekend. She was efficient about it. 3 days and she was gone. A week later, I heard through mutual friends that she was seeing someone, an older guy, established, already had everything she had described wanting. I sat in the flat that was now just mine, and I thought about what she had said. My current trajectory. All right. I went back to work. Chapter 2. I am not going to make this into a story about heartbreak fueling success. That is not what happened. What happened was simpler. I had been working before she left. I kept working after she left. The work was the same work. I did not work harder out of spite or pain. I worked because the work was worth doing and because I had always known it was worth doing, and her leaving did not change that assessment. What her leaving did change was the noise level. There is a specific kind of noise that comes with managing another person's anxiety about your choices. Claire had been quietly anxious about the startup from month 6. I had been managing that anxiety alongside everything else. When she left, the anxiety left with her. The work got quieter. The thinking got cleaner. Month 22, the product hit its first significant milestone. We had 12,000 users and 3 enterprise clients and a revenue number that was finally interesting. Month 28, we closed a Series B round that put the company's valuation at $40 million. Months 34, we were acquired. I will not say the number. It is in the public record for anyone who wants to find it. It was enough that I did not need to think about money again in the way that I had been thinking about it for the previous 3 years. I took 3 months off. I traveled. I slept properly for the first time in years. I read things that had nothing to do with product development or fundraising or market analysis. Then I started the second company. Not because I needed to, because the first thing had taught me how to do the thing, and I wanted to do it again with everything I now knew. The second company was different from the first. Larger ambitions, better team, everything I had learned applied from day one instead of discovered over 2 years of expensive mistakes. It was during the second company that I met Sira. She was our head of product, hired 6 months in, red hair and pale skin and gray eyes that were paying full attention to everything in the room, and that I noticed immediately because I was in meetings with a lot of people, and most of them were paying partial attention to most things. She was paying full attention. We were colleagues for 4 months before anything else, professional and direct and good at our respective jobs. She pushed back on things I said when she thought I was wrong. She was right about 2/3 of the time when she pushed back. I started listening more carefully on the other third. She did not know who I was outside the company. She had not looked me up beyond the basics. She engaged with me as a person in the room rather than as a person with a public record. This was rarer than it should have been. We had dinner for the first time 8 months after she joined. Professional first, then not professional, then clearly not professional, and neither of us pretending otherwise. She was the first person I had been with since Claire who made the work feel separate from the relationship, not because she did not understand the work, because she understood it completely and still found things that had nothing to do with the work more interesting. I had not known I needed that until I had it. 18 months after she joined the company, Claire applied for a position, in our marketing division. Chapter 3. My head of talent sent me the shortlist for the marketing director role on a Tuesday morning. 6 names, CVs attached. I read through them the way I read through everything, completely and with attention. The 5th name was Claire. I read her CV carefully. It was good. She had done well in the 3 years. The older established man had apparently not worked out because the relationship was not mentioned, and the timeline of her career showed 2 years at one company, and then a lateral move that made sense professionally if not personally. Her experience was relevant. Her results were strong. By every objective measure, she was among the top 3 candidates on the list. I sat with the application for a while. There were 2 ways to handle this. The first was to remove her from the process, flag a conflict of interest to the talent team, and let them manage it without me. The second was to proceed normally, treat her application the way I would treat any application. I chose the second. Not because I wanted her back. I did not want her back. That had been resolved so completely that the resolution was not something I thought about anymore. Not because I wanted to punish her. Punishing her would have required caring about her in a way I had stopped caring about her sometime in the 2nd year of building the first company. Because removing her from the process would have been a decision made because of a personal history that had nothing to do with the company, and the company deserved decisions made in its interest, not in the interest of my personal history. I told my head of talent to proceed with all 6 candidates. I told Sierra that evening. She looked at me over dinner. She asked how I felt about it. I said I felt nothing in particular. I said the timeline had been long enough that the history had become history rather than something current. She looked at me for a moment, then she said all right. She said to tell her if that changed. I said it would not change. She went back to her food. She trusted me, not blindly, with the specific trust of someone who had been paying full attention for 18 months and had formed an opinion based on what they had actually seen. That was worth more than I could easily describe. The interview process took 2 weeks. Chapter 4. I was not supposed to be in the final interviews. I usually stepped back from hiring at this level. My head of talent and the relevant department head made the final call. I reviewed the recommendation and signed off. But the marketing director role was reporting directly to me, and the board had suggested I be present for the final round, so I was in the room when Claire walked in. 3 years. She looked good. That was the first and last observation I made about her appearance. She was polished and well prepared, and she walked into the room with the specific confidence of someone who had done their research and knew they were a strong candidate. She saw me. The confidence adjusted, not collapsed, adjusted, a fraction of a second where everything she had prepared met something she had not prepared for, and then she recovered and kept walking and sat down across the table. She said it was good to see me. I said the same. The interview lasted an hour. She was excellent, genuinely excellent. Her answers were specific and backed by results, and she understood our market better than any of the other candidates had demonstrated. She had done the work. I asked her the same questions I asked everyone, nothing personal, nothing that referenced the history, just the role and what she would bring to it and how she thought about the problems we needed solving. At the end, she thanked us for our time. She stood up. She shook hands with everyone at the table. When she shook my hand, she held it a fraction of a second longer than the others. I noticed I let go at the normal time. She left. My head of talent looked at me after the door closed. She asked if there was anything she needed to know. I said the candidate was strong and her application should be evaluated on its merits. I said there was a personal history, but it was old enough that it was not relevant to the decision. She nodded. She was professional. She did not ask anything further. I went back to my office. I had 3 other meetings that afternoon. I went to all of them and was present in all of them and thought about Claire in none of them. That was the most honest indicator of where things actually stood. Chapter 5. That evening I was at Sierra's flat. We had been spending most evenings at one or the other's place for 8 months. No formal conversation about it, just the natural accumulation of evenings that both of us preferred to spend in the same place. She was cooking something that smelled good, and I was at her kitchen table with my laptop, doing the thing where I was technically still working, but at a low enough level that it counted as unwinding. She asked about the day without asking about Claire specifically. She asked what the final interviews had been like. I said one candidate was significantly stronger than the others. She looked at me. I said it was Claire. She turned back to the cooking. She said that was inconvenient. I said professionally she was the right hire. Sierra said she knew. She said that was why it was inconvenient. She brought the food to the table. She sat across from me. She said she trusted my judgment on the professional call. She said she also wanted to say clearly that if at any point the situation became more complicated than expected, she wanted to know about it directly rather than find out another way. I said that was fair and I would do that. She said all right. We ate, we talked about other things. She had a product problem she had been working through, and she described it the way she described work problems, which was directly, and with the assumption that I would engage seriously rather than just listen supportively. I engaged seriously. We worked through it over dinner. Afterward, she said she had figured out the solution. I said I thought she had figured it out before dinner and had been checking her working. She said possibly. I said definitely. She smiled, the real one, the one that appeared when something landed exactly right. I thought about Claire sitting across the interview table with her polished answers and her fraction of a second longer handshake. Then I stopped thinking about Claire because there was nothing else to think. Sierra was not a replacement for Claire. She was not a reaction to Claire. She was a person I had met and found remarkable on her own terms and had built something with that had nothing to do with anything that had come before. That was important to be clear about. I was clear about it. Chapter 6. My head of talent sent me the recommendation on Thursday. Claire unanimous across the panel, strongest candidate by a significant margin. I signed off. She started 3 weeks later. I was not in the building for her first day. I had a board meeting that ran all day and then a dinner with an investor that ran into the evening. I did not arrange this deliberately. It was simply how the schedule was. I saw her for the first time on her third day. She was in a meeting with the marketing team when I passed the glass-walled conference room. She was at the head of the table. She was already running the room. Whoever had been managing that team before had apparently not been running the room the way she was running it. I noted this and kept walking. She came to my office at 4 that afternoon. She knocked. She asked if I had 10 minutes. I had 10 minutes. She sat down. She said she wanted to acknowledge the situation directly. She said she understood if there was awkwardness, and she was not going to pretend there was not a history. She said she was here to do her job, and she intended to do it well, and she hoped we could work together professionally. I said that was exactly what I expected, and I had no concerns about our ability to work together professionally. She looked at me for a moment, like she was waiting for something else. There was nothing else. I said my assistant could schedule regular check-ins if she wanted a standing slot to discuss the marketing strategy. She said that would be useful. I said I would have it arranged. She stood up. She thanked me. At the door she paused. She said I seemed well. I said I was well. She left. I went back to what I had been doing before she knocked. Chapter 7. I know what Claire found because offices are not private, and people talk, and Sierra told me some of it, and I observed some of it myself. She found a company that was well run and that people liked working for. She found a culture that had been built deliberately rather than accidentally. She found colleagues who were capable and who were treated as capable. She found that I was different from the person she had left. Not unrecognizably different, the same person, but the version of that person that the previous 3 years had produced, quieter in meetings, more decisive, less interested in approval, the specific quality of someone who had been tested significantly and had come through it knowing what they were made of. She found Sierra. Not immediately. Sierra was not someone who announced herself. She was present and capable, and the people who worked with her understood what she was, but she was not the kind of person who performed their significance. Claire put it together over 2 weeks, the way Sierra moved through the office, the way people deferred to her judgment, the way I listened when she spoke in meetings with the specific quality of someone who had long since concluded that this person was worth listening to. She put it together on a Tuesday when she saw us in the car park after work. Nothing dramatic. I was walking Sierra to her car. We were talking. She said something and I laughed, not performed, the actual laugh. Claire was 20 feet away. I did not see her until after. Sierra told me quietly that evening that Claire had been in the car park. I said, all right. Sierra said, how do you feel about that? I said, the same as before. She looked at me. I said, I mean that. I am not performing indifference. There is simply nothing there anymore. It has been 3 years, and the 3 years have been full years, and whatever was there is not there. She said she believed me. She said she wanted to say one more thing. I said, go ahead. She said, I am not going to be uncomfortable at work because of her. I am not going to change how I am there. I have been at this company longer than she has, and I am not going to make myself smaller because of someone else's history with you. I said I would not expect her to. She said good. She drove home. I drove home thinking about the word smaller, about the specific confidence of someone who knew their own value and was not going to adjust it for anyone. That was Sierra. That had always been Sierra. Chapter 8. She found a moment 3 weeks after she started. A Friday evening, the office had mostly cleared. She came to my office door. I was finishing something. She asked if she could come in. I said yes. She sat down, not in the professional way she had sat the first time, the different way, the way of someone who was about to say something personal and knew it. She said she had been thinking about what to say for 3 weeks, and she was going to say it, and then she would not bring it up again. I waited. She said leaving had been a mistake. She said she understood that now in a way she had not understood it then. She said she had been young and afraid, and she had confused the absence of a finished thing for the absence of a future. She said she had been wrong. She said she was not asking for anything. She said she understood things had moved on. She could see that clearly. She just needed to say it because carrying it without saying it had become its own weight. I looked at her across the desk. She had rehearsed this. The words were too clean for them not to have been rehearsed. But underneath the rehearsal there was something true. She meant what she was saying. The understanding that she had been wrong was real. I said I appreciated her telling me. She waited. I said I was not going to tell her it was all right because it had not been all right at the time. I said it had been painful in the way that things were painful when you were 25 and someone who mattered decided that your potential was not bankable enough. I said I was not carrying that pain anymore, but I was not going to pretend it had not existed. She said she was sorry. I said I knew. I said the apology was received. She waited again. There was nothing more coming. The apology was received and the conversation was complete. I was not angry. I was not cold. I was not performing any of this. It was simply finished. The chapter had been closed for long enough that reopening it required more energy than was available. She understood this. I could see her understand it. The specific moment when someone stops waiting for a door to open because they have understood the door is simply not going to open. She stood up. She said she was glad the company was doing well. I said I was glad she was doing well. She left. I finished what I had been working on. Then I texted Sierra. I told her the conversation had happened and what had been said and that I was on my way. She texted back, I will put the kettle on. That was the whole response. No drama, no interrogation, just the kettle. I drove to her flat thinking about the kettle. It was the right response. It was exactly the right response. Chapter 9. Claire was good at her job. I want to say that clearly because it is true, and leaving it out would make this story smaller than it is. She rebuilt the marketing function in 90 days. She hired 2 people who were excellent. She produced a strategy that was clear and executable, and that the board approved without significant pushback. She did the work she had been hired to do, and she did it well. I respected this. I told her so in the monthly check-ins, not effusively, specifically. The results were strong, and she deserved to hear that they were strong. She was professional at all times. She did not raise the Friday conversation again. She did not create situations. She came to work and worked and left, and there was nothing that anyone in the office would have identified as a problem. But offices were not private, and people talked, and I observed what was there to observe. She watched Sierra. Not intrusively, not obviously. The way someone watched a thing they were trying to understand. She watched how Sira moved in the space, how people responded to her, how I responded to her. A company all-hands meeting 6 weeks after Claire started. Sira presented the product roadmap. She did it the way she did everything, which was directly, and with the assumption that the room was capable of following the detail if she gave them the detail. The room followed. I watched Claire watch Sira present. Afterward in the corridor, Claire stopped alongside me for a moment. She said Sira was impressive. I said yes, she was. Claire said it simply, no edge, no subtext, just an accurate observation about someone impressive. That was the most dignity I had seen from her in the whole period, saying the true thing simply without needing it to be anything else. I said the marketing deck from last week had been strong. She said thank you. We went in different directions. I thought about that exchange for a moment, the specific quality of two people who had once been something and were now something else entirely, and had found a way to be in the same building without either of those things being a problem. That was not nothing. That required something from both of them. She had done her part of it. Chapter 10. A year after Claire joined the company Sira and I moved in together. No announcement, no performance. We had been spending most nights at one place or the other for a year and a half, and the logistics of maintaining two separate spaces had become more complicated than the alternative. We found a flat we both liked. We moved in. My mother came for dinner the first month. She had met Sira before. She had liked her before. She liked her more after an evening of watching Sira explain her product philosophy in terms my mother found genuinely interesting, and then ask my mother questions about her own work with the full quality of someone actually interested in the answers. My mother pulled me aside after. She said, "This one." I said, "I know." She said she had thought the same thing when she met Claire, and she had been wrong. I said she had not been the only one. She said she was different then. She said with Claire she had thought yes because of how Claire looked at me. She said with Sira she thought yes because of how Sira listened. I sat with that for a long time. She was right. Claire had looked at me the way people looked at things they found valuable, the assessment underneath the warmth. Sira listened. She listened to what I actually said and asked about what was underneath it, and found the underneath more interesting than the surface. That was the difference. That had always been the difference. Claire left the company 8 months after she joined. Good reason. A better role elsewhere. I wrote her a reference that was honest about what she had done and what she was capable of because it was the honest thing to write. She thanked me for it professionally, by email. I wished her well. I meant it. There was no drama in the leaving. There was no unfinished thing. She came and she did good work and she left, and the chapter that had opened when she applied closed again cleanly. The company continued. The product roadmap Sira had built continued. The marketing strategy Claire had built continued because it was a good strategy, and good strategies did not need their authors to remain to keep working. On a Tuesday evening, Sira and I were in the flat. She was on the sofa with a book. I was at the desk finishing something. The flat was doing its Tuesday evening thing, quiet and warm and ordinary in the specific way of a space that two people have made their own. She said my name without looking up from the book. I looked over. She said, "Was it worth it, the 3 years?" I said, "Which part?" She said, "All of it, building it after she left, the acquisition, the second company, getting to here." I thought about it honestly. I said the building was worth it regardless of anything else. I would have built it anyway. She said, "And the anything else?" I said the anything else led here, so yes. She went back to her book. I went back to my screen. The flat was warm, the work was good. The person on the sofa was the person I had found when I stopped looking for anything and just did the work and paid attention to what was in front of me. Claire had left because the trajectory was not what she needed. She had been right about that. The trajectory had not been what she needed. It had been exactly what I needed. And it had led here. That was everything. That was more than enough.